When I was 16, I decided to surprise my parents with a bouquet of flowers for Valentine's Day, which we always celebrated as a family holiday, not a romantic one. I didn't have a car to go to the florist, but my high school was a short walk from the hospital, which had a gift store that sold floral arrangements between classes. The week of Valentine's Day, I went to the hospital alone, cutting across campus to pass through a network of side roads populated by specialized doctors' offices that operate at odd hours, buildings where traveling physicians mostly do surgical consultations or perform minor procedures a few times a month. The trip there went without incident. As I walked back down the deserted roads with dodging flowers in tow, I noticed an unmaintained 1990s car behind me. Although my memories of the car are hazy, I was left with the impression that there were at least two men in it, whose faces I could not make out. At first I assumed that the driver was just afraid of hitting me. For that reason, they didn't drive by. I walked sharply farther along the grassy side of the road, showing them that they could safely drive forward. But they still refused to let me pass, continuing to creep slowly behind me. Beginning to suspect that the driver was more interested in me than his destination, I started walking faster. The car confirmed my suspicions by matching my speed. Despite the impracticality of my shoes and the threat of spilling water from the vase, I began to run as fast as I could. They hit the gas and reached my speed again. At that moment I realized that the car was following me, that there was no one in sight, and that I needed to run. I rushed into the first parking lot I could find. The car swerved behind me. Despite the fact that there were only 2 or 3 cars in the spacious front parking lot and no other signs of activity in the office, this car did not stop to park in the many available spaces. Instead, the driver decided to chase me into the partially constructed rear parking lot behind the office. He drove around all the available parking spaces and pinned me against a pile of construction debris and rubble, stopping diagonally less than 3 feet from me. But before anyone could get out of the car, I somehow managed to get over the small ledge of debris at my back, vase in hand, and jumped off the top of it to land painfully on the other side. Fortunately, it was a patch of undeveloped land within sight of my high school campus. I quickly looked over my shoulder to see if they were following me. After I got to the top of the pile of rubble, the car disappeared from view. They hadn't parked in that parking lot at all. They had no business being there. The driver was following me. I raced at top speed and didn't stop until I was drenched in sweat in the middle of winter. When I told my classmates in the student lounge about what had happened, they didn't think much of it, perhaps because our hometown is supposedly the capital of human trafficking and the crime rate here is outrageous. Although I'm convinced it was something more informal than human trafficking, since the dilapidated car suggested poverty, and I had read that human trafficking usually occurs through courtship, not suddenly snatched off the street. In hindsight, I probably should have told the adults about it, alerted campus security, and called the local police department on the non-emergency phone. But I was young, stupid, insecure, and afraid of getting in trouble for leaving campus without a signed permit to do so. I kept trying to convince myself that I had misread the situation or somehow overreacted. I don't know what I would have even told the police if I had called them, since I was completely ignorant about cars and would not have been able to identify the make of the car if asked. I also couldn't see the faces of the passengers. I was afraid that my parents would limit my already extremely limited freedom if they knew I was in danger. I feel terrible that I didn't tell anyone, and I sincerely hope that my secrecy didn't result in anyone getting hurt or killed. I believe that the only missing people, not counting runaway children or elderly people with dementia, in this town right now are men. Unless you count one woman a few decades ago who stalked and tried to trap a 16-year-old girl with flowers outside a doctor's office just before Valentine's Day in 2016. During high school and college, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts for about 7 years and bounced around to a few different locations. I was used to working at the Dunkin' in my town, where we would get the yeast rings delivered periodically and frost them ourselves as needed. I transferred to a new shop about a half hour from my house with all the same responsibilities, except for the donuts. They were delivered by corporate. They arrived frosted almost perfectly already. They looked like the plastic donuts they show in commercials, always round and not squished together, and they would dip them in frosting so it was evenly spread and neat. It was a busy Saturday morning and was close to Valentine's Day, so we had a fresh order of brownie battered donuts delivered that morning. We were slammed, which was normal for a weekend, so it wasn't out of the ordinary to see my manager, whom I'll call Jeremy, running around completely stressed out. When he first ran past me, I didn't think anything of it. I continued making sandwiches at the sandwich station. He rushed by carrying a pastry tray, and I watched him begin frantically throwing something in the trash, looking worried as all hell. At first, I laughed. "Jeremy, what the heck are you doing?" He straightened out and looked absolutely beside himself. I had never seen Jeremy look so lost, so I asked what was going on and if something was wrong. Someone filled the brownie battered donuts with staples. He told me he'd gotten a phone call from corporate that one of the stores in our chain, which contained 10, had somehow discovered multiple staples in every donut in their order. There were at least 48 donuts for our store and more or less for the other 9, depending on their sales. They told Jeremy we had to get rid of the most recent delivery because whoever put the batter in the filler dumped a ton of staples in as well. Thankfully, we hadn't sold all of the previous order yet from that morning, because it was still relatively early. But the more I thought about it, the more I felt like I was going to be sick. What if a child had gotten one of those? I pictured some family sitting at home on a Saturday morning, going out for some drinks and donuts and imagining everything else that could have happened after. I never found out what came of it, and as far as I know, neither did my boss. I can only assume nothing happened to the person who did it, because I thankfully never heard anything about anybody suffering on the news. Makes me wonder if they covered it up or something. I hope they were able to find the asshole who did it. This happened last year, a few days before Valentine's Day. I was 18 years old at the time, and I was a very shy kid. It seemed that every girl I saw ignored me or just didn't really want to talk to me anyway. I was at a restaurant with my best friend at the time, who I called John. We were talking about a bunch of different things, but mainly sports. Eventually, I asked him about some dating advice. I knew I could ask him about this sort of thing because at the time he had a girlfriend. I told John the first was sick and tired of being ignored by every girl, and John told me to take out my phone. He took his out as well and told me about the dating site he used to meet his girlfriend. John helped me by explaining how to make a good profile and things like that. A few hours later, I was at my house in my room setting up the profile. I tried to find the nicest picture of myself that I could, and when I did, I used it for my profile. Then I used the app for a while and hoped to get some matches. I decided to watch some TV in my room after that, sitting on my bed, waiting for my phone to go off, saying I had matched with someone. I was skeptical and didn't really think that it would work, but after about just a minute, there was a ding from my phone. I grabbed my phone to look and see what it was. I saw the message was from the dating website and it said someone had matched with me. When I clicked on it, I saw I had matched with a girl named Eva. I clicked on her profile and saw that there was a picture of Eva. She was my same age and had black hair and bright blue eyes. She was also wearing a blue dress and she was smiling, showing off her bright white teeth. I felt myself smiled. This was the first girl who I was about to talk to, so I decided to send her a simple hello to start the chat between us. A minute later, Eva sent a hello back. We ended up chatting and she seemed really nice. I then asked Eva if I could meet her in real life and not just chat with her, and she actually said yes. She told me I could meet her at her house, and then she gave me her house address. She told me I could come over that very same night if I wanted to. I said yeah and gave her a thumbs up. I stopped chatting with Eva and started getting ready. It was a bit cold outside that night, so I put some warm clothes on. I then grabbed my phone from my bed and hopped into my car. I messaged Eva, telling her I was on my way over. As I was driving down the road, I kept thinking about how lucky I was going to meet a girl on the first night of using the dating app, and I was excited about what John was going to say when I told him about it. As I continued driving to Eva's house, I suddenly realized that the road I was driving on was becoming more and more empty and just woods. I passed by houses every several minutes, but there were barely any streetlights, and it seemed that I was heading into the middle of nowhere. In fact, it took me almost an hour to get to her house. When I got there, I texted Eva, telling her I was there and got out of my car. When I looked up at the house I was standing in front of, it looked like it would cave in at any second. I had a bad feeling, but I decided to keep going up to the front door. As I did, I noticed the grass that was in the front lawn was knee-height. I sent Eva another message. I told her I was in front of the house and told her to tell me if this was the right address. She sent a message saying yes, she was there and to just go inside and call out her name. I grabbed the doorknob and let it slowly creak open. Walking inside the house, I noted that it was dark and dusty inside. I didn't see Eva or anyone else. And then I tried to send Eva another message, but the app wouldn't work. The Wi-Fi signal was down, and I wasn't really getting any service on my phone. I decided to walk around to see if I could find her. So I headed into the living room. I saw a bunch of old furniture, and then I noticed hanging from the ceiling was a bright blue dress. I noticed it was the same one that Eva had been wearing in a couple of the photos she had on her profile. Then I saw a black wig hanging from the dress. It made me really confused because Eva's hair was black in the pictures. I called out Eva, hoping she would hear my voice. But just then, in the deepest and creepiest tone, I heard a yes from behind me. I nearly jumped and hit the ceiling. I turned around, but I didn't see Eva. The only person standing in front of me wasn't a girl. It was a guy wearing a black hoodie. He had the hood up and was wearing blue jeans. I noticed he had brown hair and he gave me a creepy smile and winked. I asked who he was, but he didn't say anything. He just pointed at the blue dress and the wig, grinning at me with the darkest smile that a human could. Then I noticed he had something in his hand. It appeared to be a gun. He told me in a deep voice to hand over everything I had on me. Then he pulled out a bag. I didn't want to argue with him, so I pulled everything out of my pocket and dropped them into his bag, even the watch I was wearing. The man then started to walk away from me. Pretty soon I watched him walk out the front door. I was relieved, but also still terrified. Finally, I was able to get my legs to move again and I ran out to my car as fast as I could. Luckily, I didn't see that freak again, but he had all of my stuff. I drove all the way back to John's house and told him everything. He called the police from there, and when they came, I told them everything. As it turns out, the man who had lured me into the house was also pretending to be the Eva girl, and she didn't really exist.